the Stones of Strength podcast, an audio plinth from upon which we will endeavor to centralize and showcase stories and information related to the lifting of historical and non-historical stones and the ongoing development and reemergence of stone lifting culture.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Stones of Strength podcast. We've got an excellent episode today with a fantastic guest. I think everyone's really going to like it. Before we get on with our guests, though, we've got a couple of things we want to touch on. Been seeing a lot of stone lifting events going on lately, which is a lot of fun to check out. Carroll County had their Stones of Strength competition. Jamie Gorian had the second event of the McGregor Stone Lifting Games. I believe this is part 2. Coburg also had a Stones of Strength competition. That was through the International Highland Games. And it's been really neat to see all of these. Stone lifting is a fantastic thing, but it's sometimes often a solitary pursuit. You're never in a gym with people. Often you're in your garage or in the bush by yourself. And without a question, that's a huge draw to this, and I think most people would agree with it. But at the same time, when you actually get a bunch of like-minded people together and have a big event like that, it's a really neat opportunity to lift together and just have a lot of fun. So it's been really neat watching these events. As well in Edmonton here, for anybody in Canada or in Alberta that's looking to get involved in our second gathering, it will be held September 9th, and we'll be putting out the registration pretty quick here. The spots fill up very quickly, so if you're interested, keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, and people can find more info on that on the Edmonton Stones of Strength Instagram page. There seems to be a bit of a buzz around the stone lifting community. There's just so many amazing things happening. There's all these events. There's so many documentaries that are sort of on their way. One of which is being done by a company called Maximum Iron. So they are working on a documentary called Stones: The Rise, Fall, and Rise Again of Scottish Stone Lifting. And my understanding is that's going to be out sometime next year. But in the meantime, they've also advertised that they're about to put out a stone lifting magazine, which is going to be amazing. An entire magazine dedicated to our fairly niche but wonderful hobby or passion of stone lifting. And they've indicated that if you want a chance to have a picture of yourself lifting a stone published in one of their editions of the magazine, tag them in your stone lifting photos. So that would be tagging at Maximum Iron, all one word, in your stone lifting photos on Instagram for a chance for them to be featured in a magazine.
On the note of all these stone lifting events that have been happening, if you're an athlete or an event promoter and you want us to give a shout out, let us know. We don't have a massive audience yet. It is growing quickly, and we're very proud of that. But whether it's through Instagram or through the podcast itself, if you want your event to be heard about, let us know. We'll do our best. Yeah,
we've been receiving a lot of support from the community, so we welcome the opportunity for us to be able to pay that forward. So as Dave mentioned, our episode today is awesome. We have an incredibly interesting and passionate stone lifter. But I'd say, calling him an interesting and passionate stone lifter is selling him incredibly short. This gentleman is a true Renaissance man. He's an artist. He's a musician. He's a stone sleuth. He's a cultural historian. He's a kettlebell world record holder. He's a health and fitness advocate. And we are very, very fortunate that not only did he give us his time to come on and share a lot of his amazing encounters and stories and adventures with us, but we also get the benefit of being able to watch these by way of Instagram as he travels around Ireland and really sort of pulls the curtain back on what was a previously unknown but incredibly vast and rich history of stone lifting in Ireland. Coming up over the next couple of days, if you're catching this episode right when it's released, he'll be embarking on a nationwide stone tour with Sean Urquhart to go and revisit some of these stones of strength. And we wish both of those gentlemen the best of luck. And specifically, we're wishing David the best of luck when he goes back to go toe-to-toe with the first stone that he had, or historical stone that he had recovered, being the Inishmore stone. He, as you'll hear on the episode, he didn't, being new to stone lifting, when he first encountered this stone, he wasn't quite able to get a successful lift, but he has very, very clearly been putting in the work, and we know he's got it in him this time. So, without further ado, our guest, David Keohan. All right, here we are with David Keohan. David, thank you so much for setting aside some time to join us. We're really excited to have this chat.
Thanks a million for having me on. Really looking forward to it now myself.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, I personally became aware of your work after coming back from Scotland last year, and really sort of that I had already been bitten by the bug of stone lifting, but going to Scotland and traveling and lifting the stones with David and having my parents there, that was when I knew, like, this is something that I want to do more of. I want to engross myself in stone lifting culture, get to sort of know more of the members of the community. And I stumbled on your page, and immediately I was like, what you were doing, what you continue to do is incredible. And I just, selfishly, when we started this podcast, David and I had talked about, there's so many people in the stone lifting community that we would love to just get an opportunity to chat with. But it would be kind of creepy if we were to just reach out and say, hey, you don't know us from a hole in the wall. Can we spend time to chat and pick your brain about some of your stone lifting adventures? So we figured, well, let's do it. Let's be creepy, but under the guise of a podcast. And so you were one of the people.
Sneaky, lads. I like it, though.
Yeah, you were one of the people that were at the very front of our list. So thanks again for setting aside time.
Well, why don't we get Sorry, go ahead.
No, come on, work away. Yeah, work away.
I was going to say, why don't you introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what your background and strength is before we actually dive into all the aspect of stone lifting.
Sure. Well, my name is David Keohan, and I've been researching and looking for the culture of stone lifting in Ireland over these past 2 years now. Before that, there was very little known about stone lifting in Ireland. The culture was very deep. Due to a lot of things happening in like the late 1800s to do with like colonization and the repression of Irish culture. But I knew the stones were there. It was just a matter of just going searching for them. And how I got into stone lifting to start off with was, when I first got into health and fitness, I was 32 years old. Before that, I was just into music and art and drinking and smoking and everything that goes with it. Through my 20s, So I didn't do any... I have no fitness or strength background at all until at the age of about 31, when I was in a really bad place mentally and physically, and I started running. So I could only run about 100 yards, 150 yards the first time I went running. That turned to, after about 3 or 4 months of just keeping going, about 5K, which went up to 10K, which 6 months later went to a marathon. So my background would be more endurance-based. From there, I got into a little-known crazy Russian sport called kettlebell sport, which is strength endurance. It's for all the world like Olympic rowing. So you're clean and jerking 2 kettlebells for time, and you can't put them down. So it's very, very attritional. On the cardio side, again, strength endurance as opposed to just pure strength. But I'm delighted that I got to represent my country in that, and I got to win national, European and world titles at amateur level. I got to live professionally for my country, which is something I'm very, very proud of. Got my Master of Sports rank in 2018 and set a world record in 2019. So from then I was like, right, I've got this really, really good strength endurance background. I only weighed about 78 kilos. I think it was like marathon weightlifting for all the world,
Yeah.
So COVID struck hard over here, and they took it very seriously over here. So everything got shut down, everything. Like there was a 5K lockdown. Everything was locked. You couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to the gym. So all I had out the back was my wife's beautiful stone carving. She was in an art college, which I picked up and weighed at 60 kilos and started chucking that all over the garden and hopping holes in the back garden. And I got really interested in the actual functionality of lifting a stone. I was like, this is actually really cool. That started me off. I was like, this is a really cool movement. It feels primal. It feels like, it's touched something kind of deep inside. So I took that further and I started lifting on my local beach called Benvoy Beach, which is beautiful, UNESCO World Heritage Site, about 20 minutes away from me here. And I have these beautiful stones down there that I named and weighed, and got lifting them. And then, like I'm sure everybody in this podcast is going to say, what did I watch? Stoneland. I watched Full Sturker, and I watched the Levantadores made by Rogue Fitness.
Those are
and what really, really stuck. They were incredible. I mean, incredible. And what really stuck with me was there was a stone in Scotland called the Fianna stone, or they called the Fianna stone. So, I mean, I was raised as an Irishman on stories of Fionn McCool and the Fianna. I mean, this was taught to us in school. This is part of our culture. This is part of our lore, So I heard that there was a Fianna stone in Glenlyon in Scotland. It's like saying to a Norseman, Thor's hammer is sitting in a field in Trondheim. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's there, go pick it up. I was like, are you fucking telling me that there's a stone that Fionn McCool and the Fianna are attributed to lifting? Like, this was part of our nation. This Fionn McCool is a hero in Ireland. He's an absolute hero. So I made it my business to go and lift the Fianna stone, which was just an incredible experience for me as a Celtic man, to go get in touch with my ancestral warrior past. This is part of who we are. The Fina were Scottish Irish. So it's like it was just amazing to do that. I'll never ever forget it as long as I live. It was probably still to this day, one of the coolest things I've ever done. And that really started off my journey then into exploring Irish lifting stones, which I'll get into if I can give you guys a word edgeways, because I'll just talk on.
All right. No. That's great. Was the Fianna your first historical stone you'd ever lifted?
No, I went over. I phoned. And first of all, I'm going to thank both Jamie Gorian and Martin Janssens, because I was only starting my stone lifting journey. These guys are two powerhouses of the sport, and I just got in contact with them and said, look, I'm thinking coming over and doing the Scottish lifting stones. And Jamie gave up a full day in Scotland. He met me on the Saturday. We went over in a camper van with two of my friends, and he met us and took us around. We done 14 lifting stones on the Saturday. We done the Pewter Rock stone. We done the Monachile stone. We done all the Sheriff Muir stones. We done the Fina last. We done the Ardvarlich. We done and the McGregor. So we done like a heap of stones on the Saturday. But because Jamie knew where everything was, we just sat into his car and he just took us to all these places. He'd all the people warned that we were coming, so there was no problem getting in anywhere. So he just took us to all these places, gave us all the history. It was just a great day out. It was a great day out. And then the next day, Martin Janssens, again, gave up his Sunday to meet me and lift the Beraven stone with him, So we lifted on the way up. We lifted, because going up the one highway, we lifted like the Newtown Moor. We lifted the Dalwhinnie. And then we went and we lifted the Beraven. So it was like 16 stones in about 24 hours. It was pretty intense. But it was just that really, the graw, what we call the graw, the love for stone lifting was cemented in. So then I made it my business to start the search for traditional Irish lifting stones. And little did I think I'd be here a year and a half later with 24. 2 dozen found, It's amazing.
You're not one for easing into things. So from the couch to a marathon in 6 months, and kettlebell world records, and then stone lifting over to Scotland, lifting, almost 2 dozen stones in your first tour.
Yeah, it's looking back on it, because I don't usually look back that much, as I keep looking forward. So looking back, it's been a pretty insane 10 years, all right, from not being able to barely get off my couch to all of this, it's just been incredible, and it's the second bite of the cherry, and I'm so thankful that I've had the opportunity to do this, so that's why I'm not wasting any time, you know what I mean? I wasted all my well, I say wasted, but my 20s went by in a bit of a blur, so now I'm like, I'm getting the second bite of the cherry, so let's just keep going, let's do it, let's keep powering forward,
Yeah, you're certainly doing that. That's amazing. And those two guys that you had named in Scotland, Martin and Jamie, they're just such gentlemen. I didn't have the opportunity to meet them when we were down there. We were chatting with Jamie, but it was the weekend that they had, I believe it was Britain's Strongest Man. And so we didn't have a chance to meet up with them, but just texting them with the whole time we're down there. And they're just such gentlemen and such great advocates for the history of it and the love of it. So those are like really outstanding men. And I'd love the opportunity to meet them.
I couldn't be more thankful to the lads. Just to give up your time is not easy in the way things are. You know what I mean? We don't have much time off. So for them to take time out of their day just to meet me, who had no background in this at all. But they were so giving of their time and all the information, the history. It was just wonderful. Two great guys.
I think it's pretty fair to say that you're paying that forward now with the work that you're doing. So thank you for that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And anybody who ever wants to talk or meet up, I'll make it my business. The good thing about Ireland is it's fucking tiny. So, you can meet up anybody, pretty much anywhere. Even I'm at the bottom of Ireland. I'm right at the very, very end, But to all these stones, I can get there and to drive home the same day and almost be back for lunchtime, Yeah. Wow. Ireland is pretty small, but for something that's so small, there's such a diverse range of stone lifting, of the actual way to lift the stones over here. It's incredible what I've come across over this past year and a half.
Yeah, well, let's jump into that, because we've caught you at a pretty amazing time, because you are preparing to go out on a stone tour and settle some unfinished business with the Innisford stone, which was the first stone that you had recovered.
Oh, lads. Do you know what? That's it almost feels, it was such a cool story, it almost feels like a film. It feels surreal to find, because, I'm sure you know the whole scale, the whole story behind it, but for Liam O'Flaherty to have written the story called The Stone, he wrote a story, a short story, well-known short story about a well-known writer. And he wrote this story called The Stone about this old man lamenting, his lost strength, and he's reminiscing about his wonderful things that he'd done in his youth, and lifting the stone was one of them. And he searched for the stone and he found it again. And the way the writer talks about like setting up to lift the stone, the way he talks about it, the way it made him feel, the way he talks about how he lifted it and the strain. I mean, it's like you're there. It's actually like you're there. So I was thinking to myself as I read that story, I was like, that has to be real. This can't just be fiction. Now, all of his stories are based because Liam O'Flaherty was born on Inishmore, which is one of the Aran Islands, and that's where the stone is. So it's like all his stories about the Aran Island life, they're beautiful. He's a wonderful writer. But it's like, wouldn't it be so cool if that was a real thing? So then, I got in contact with the likes of, I was reading through some of Peter Martin's work, and he said, yeah, that stone, there's meant to be a stone on the Aran Islands. And I was like, fuck, that's awesome. But the one that really kicked me off looking for it was an old Reddit thread that Peter Martin was on. And this woman who lived on the island, Fiona was her name, just said, there's a stone on a rough boulder strewn pathway in Gortnacoppel in Inishmore, which is just around the corner from where he lived, and said that stone is still there. And that's the story that he wrote about. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, that this is a real thing? So this was the very first stone of it to see could I find it. So, I mean, myself and my friend then went off on the ferry over to the Aran Islands. Like, it's a 4.5 hour drive from here over on the ferry on this fucking awful day, wind and waves and battered by the sea. We get to the place, we get on a bike. It's a 25-minute cycle to get to the place because you can't have any cars on the island. And we get to this rough boulder strewn pathway. And I was like, how am I going to know which stone is the stone? Because the Aran Islands is just rock. It's just scraped clear. It's like a glacial karst landscape. It's just like glaciers just came and scraped on the topside off. It's just bare stone and boulders everywhere. It's like walking on the fucking surface of the moon. It's incredible. And so I was looking around. I was like, which one is the one? I mean, how am I going to know what's the stone? But in the story, which I had with me, it was like that it was they said the sunshine shone upon the particles of mica in the surface of the stone. So I was thinking like mica would be in granite because it's like it's an igneous stone. So I was like, right, okay, so it has to be a granite stone. So like, I saw this pink granite boulder sitting in this little fucking pathway by itself, and I said in the story that there was bruised stones all around it, like where people lifted up, put it back down again, and I was like, there it is. I was like, that's it. That has to be it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's the fucking stone. That's the one that Liam O'Flaherty wrote about. And I was like, I didn't know for sure, but like, you could almost feel a tangible energy of this stone, I couldn't believe it. So I got a few lifts on it. And then Jamie Gorian got wind of it. He's like, come on over. So a month later, we go back out again. And Jamie gets an incredible lift on it up to his chest, which I'd say he's the first man to do it probably in 100 to 150 years.
He is so skilled.
And I break the ground with it. Just, I'd get a kind of decent wind under. That's as much as I could manage the last time. But we find a man doing a walking tour. And he said, I asked him, I just brought it in. I said, look, lads, do you want about the stone down there? Oh, yeah, he said, that's called the Moulin Port Pale on Doon. That's the lifting stone of the area. I said, is it the pink one? Yeah, he said, that's the pink one down there. He said, in the little patch of grass. So I said, that's the Liam O'Flaherty stone he wrote about. There it is. That's Ireland's first lifting stone. I couldn't believe it. I was blown away that this story is, this piece of fiction is not fiction. It's based on reality, and there it is. We actually have a lifting stone in Ireland now, and I was so proud that we had one. Stevie Shanks had me on his podcast because we found this stone, and myself and Stevie were so proud that we had a stone on the old man of the stones map. We had one stone off the coast. We had a stone, and you can see like Iceland has just bloom of red dots of stones, and Scotland has its bloom of dots, and we had one, and was like, we're on the map. That's great. And remember Stevie asking me, he said, do you think there'd be many more? I said, geez, imagine if there was 10. I said, wouldn't that be incredible? Imagine if we could find like double figures of stones. And he was like, I hope we do. I hope we do. And then I just got bitten by the bug, lads. I just kept going,
That story by Liam O'Flaherty, I'd read that. Do you know who David Horn is? Are you familiar with that name?
I am indeed, yeah.
Yes, he's a very, very strong man. He's a strength historian and just such a gentleman. I got to know David a little bit through steel bending, but he's also a big stone lifter and just a great guy. But he had shared that short story of the stone, and that was before we'd gone to Scotland. And the way that they described that, like we'd lifted a lot of stones here before that, but never anything with cultural context. And the way that story is written,
yes,
is like, it's halfway between goosebumps and tears. Like when you read that story, it's extraordinary. And so that was my, like, I don't know, the fact that you found that one is really cool. And I think you, Dale, had done a little bit of looking into the geology side of things for that.
Yeah, so I'm unironically someone who loves lifting stones. I'm also a geologist by education, and so when I had seen some of your pictures of the Inishmore stone, right, it just, the stone looks so alien in that environment. You have this pink granite on just a pavement of limestone. The term is actually limestone pavement, the technical term for that landform. It's, like you'd said, a karst feature, so it's been scraped by a glacier, and then it has these erosional features where you have these fissures between these big rectangular limestone slabs. It looks like someone has set those out as paving blocks. And like, you know, if I'm going to get nerdy on everybody here, so that limestone was laid down at the bottom of the ocean about 340 million years ago. And the Aran Islands used to be attached to mainland Ireland. And it was during the last glaciation between 34,000 and 15,000 years ago that the British ice sheet scoured and eroded away what is now Galway Bay, which then subsequently filled up with water at the termination of the Ice Age when the sea levels rose. But the Inishmore stone is a glacial erratic that was dropped there by the glaciation. And that's why it looks so foreign there, because it is foreign. It is probably from one of the mountain ranges in the northwest and brought there by the glacier. And it's actually, it ties to a greater history too than just the fact that I would imagine that stone was picked as the lifting stone because it was so unique in an area that looks just sort of gray and barren. There's this beautiful, shiny granite stone. But if you've seen the pictures that you have you noticed those sort of circular erosional depressions on the top of the stone?
Yes.
So it turns out that because the granite stones were so much harder than all the limestone they're surrounded by, the ancient peoples of the Aran Islands used to use them as bowls or mortars to crush up grains and shells, or as a font, a religious font that they would then use the water that's collected in them to bless themselves. So the history of that stone is incredible from a stone lifting perspective, but it goes far deeper to an ancient people that were using that for purposes, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago, which is just so neat. I got into a geology rabbit hole and I just kept on probably how you do with the stone finding. You just start peeling back these layers and it gets more and more the deeper you go. So
just diving in head first, like that's all I've been doing, you know. And it's took up like so much of my time, but it's like it's a labor of love. I mean, I don't see it as taking up my time. I see it like I can't wait to go out and do this. You know what I mean? You're at the coal face of bringing back a culture that was lost. I mean, it's such an honor, you know. And I can't believe that nobody's done it before, you know, because like these stories have been sitting there. They've been sitting there in the National Folklore Collection. I'm sure you guys know about that. If you don't, I can give you a brief history on it.
You explaining it, maybe for the people that aren't familiar with it, that are listening?
Sure. So what happened was back in 1937, 38, and 39, the Irish government put folklore on the curriculum for kids in 6th class, like so that's like 11, 12-year-olds, and said, go back to your parents and grandparents and ask them about the traditions of your area where you live. Anything. So they give them a whole list of topics, and anything from like banshees and leprechauns and mermaids to, you know, say fighting that happened in the area, to local heroes. And the local heroes was anyone who was like, say, done something spectacular in the area. So like a strong man lifted something, or somebody's a noted dancer or singer or versifier or poet or shanachie or storyteller. But they went back, and you think about it, like there could be like a couple of hundreds, maybe even thousands of schools in Ireland. Every single school then had hundreds and hundreds of stories. They were all brought together, collated, sent to Dublin, and the whole folklore of the nation was collected in 3 years, you know. And that's all up in the NFC, the National Folklore Collection up in Dublin, up in UCD College, which I've been up to, which is incredible. But I mean, all those stories are there, you know, and like those stories are going back, say, like some of the grandparents back in the 1930s, they could be talking about stones or stories from the 1850s, and some of the stories are found went back in even another 100 years again, you know. So all these stories were sitting there in the National Folklore Collection, just waiting for somebody to go searching for them, you know. So, I mean, I remember reading up before I went over to the Aran Islands, I remember reading about Dr. Conor Heffernan, who's been an absolute legend over the past 12 months, probably the best hype man in the world. He's been bigging me up to everybody. He's been talking to Jan Todd, he's been talking to everybody you can imagine. He's on it, the bar bend guys, he's been talking to fucking iron culture. he's been on to everybody and saying, look what this fucking lunatic is doing. He's bringing back this culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's driving through fucking fields. He's slashing through hedges. And he's just bringing this shit back, you know. And it's like, he's been incredible. And he was talking about that these stones were there. And he had a whole load of pieces written about them. About like the Liam O'Flaherty one on that. He said they're there, but they're very hard to find because they're at generic names. Like, you know, it's in a townland, but it's at crossroads. Like, you know, a kid is going to write, it's just at the crossroads, and they'll think everybody knows what the fuck they're talking about because they're from the area.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, of course you don't. But it's at a crossroads, or lifted over a wall, or in a graveyard. So they are very, very generic. So, I mean, what I find is with Ireland is, and what I've been doing is just going to the townland. And, like, we're an oral culture. We always were.
Mm-hmm.
We love to talk, as you can probably gather. We love to listen. We love to get stories. And we're really fucking nosy and curious about somebody doing something out of the ordinary. Yeah. You know, so I'll go to a townland and I'll have an idea, maybe someone to ask. So I might be in contact maybe with a local heritage or archaeology group, and I'll meet somebody. And I'll ask them about a certain story, you know. And if they don't know, they'll take it to someone who does know. So they say, look, I don't really know a lot about it, but there's a man living down in a farmyard there. He's 90 years old. Go down and knock on his door and tell him I sent you and what the story is about. And then you're knocking on someone's door. You're going in and you start to chat. And you're like, oh, yeah, I haven't thought about it maybe in 50 years, but 'tis there, all right, or it should still be there. Come in, shall we have a cup of tea? And you're sitting at someone's table having a cup of tea, and they're telling you, they're opening up about all these beautiful reminiscences and stories about this stone and about maybe the person who lifted it. And then they're like, sure, hop in the tractor or hop in the car and I'll take you up. And then they're driving you to the fucking place. And then you're going in, you're seeing these stones. You know, it could have been sitting there like 100 years. You know, it could have been sitting there like 50 years, 70 years, and nobody has touched it. And all of a sudden you're there and you're like, that's it. You know, that's the stone of whatever, you know, and it's there. And then you're putting it back on the map. I mean, some of them aren't that easy. Some of them I have to go hacking and slashing through hedges, and there's nobody who knows about it, so I just have to kind of trust that it might be in a place like the Flag of 10 being probably the best instance of that. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But yeah, it's been some adventure, lads. And what for me, it's been about meeting the people. It's the people, the Irish people, you know, the stories, the storytellers, the way they tell you about who lifted it before and how helpful everybody has been. I mean, I've met nobody yet who's told me to F off or what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
Everybody is interested because, I mean, it's part of their local lore, you know, it's part of your local place, you know, and they're proud of being from there. And then, you know, consequently, they're proud that something like this is from there. So it's just been wonderful.
I think, too, like that, the Irish Folklore Commission's initiative that you had outlined was brilliant from so many angles. Number one, it was to be able to amalgamate all of the stories from these small villages and parishes into a centralized database, which has now been put online by the University College Dublin. I believe it's duchas.ie?
That's right, Duchas, D-U-C-H-A-S.
.ie.
Duchas is Irish for birthright.
But there's also the secondary effect that maybe not as intended, but equally as important, is that by doing that and tasking these children with the goal of bringing forth these stories, you create an entirely new generation of people equipped with this rich oral history that then go back, talk to their friends, can pass it on to their children, their grandchildren, and disseminate it through the community, which is why when you go to some of these places, you can knock on a door and people have knowledge of these local things because these have just sort of been, you know, passed down through generations and generations. And I'm sure there was a big resurgence in that ownership and that information of these local stories through that initiative. So,
oh, lads, the pride. I mean, like I was up in Carna, which is West Galway. I mean, West Galway. So right out on the coast. And I went up to this place I found out about a stone called Cloughnarkeen, which is the stone of the cove. And I met the last man who lifted it. He lifted it maybe 40 years ago. But the pride he had that somebody took an interest to come up and come all the way up from Waterford, which was like a good 5-hour drive through shitty old winding country roads, you know, roads with the grass run down the middle of them, you know, and to come up to his area. And he only had to walk 100 yards down to see me. And he was so proud of that. Like, you know, he was telling all his friends, and then all his friends were coming along. Don't lift the stone yet. I want to tell all my friends. So all his friends were coming along, and then all of a sudden, like, the wives were coming out with flasks of tea, and then the kids were coming out, and the dogs were coming out, and then all of a sudden, like, the local Garda sergeant was coming out, and he was telling his friends. So all of a sudden, like, there's 30 people standing there around the stone, and they're all telling stories about the last time it was lifted, and they're all talking about Mihal, the last man who lifted it, and Jesus, if you get wind under that, that'll be fantastic. There's nobody lifting that thing in 40 years. And then after about 4 or 5 attempts, because it's an absolutely massive, and all the Irish stones are absolutely massive.
Yeah, they are.
Oh my God, they're huge. They're absolutely, every single one of them. It's like, will I ever get a halfway normal stone? I get it, chest. All these things are fucking massive. But I got the wind under that stone, and they were all so happy. Everybody coming over giving you hugs, shaking your hand, Mahan Far, well done. And they were just delighted. They were delighted that you're carrying on a tradition that might have been lost, And that's what it is for me. It's you're carrying on something that in this kind of postmodernist weird world that we're in, where everything is kind of refuting everything else online, and everything's going to get a little bit more homogenous, and we're kind of losing a sense of who we are. That these stones are there, and these stories are there, and they will be there now again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm just doing so much about like writing books and stuff and putting it all up online. But it's like you're carrying on something that's uniquely Irish, and it's a real honor to do it.
You touch on, I really like a lot of what you said there, but it was a podcast you done, I believe, Johnny Dillon. Is that right? The gentleman?
Johnny's just such a good guy.
He seems that way, and you guys touched on that because he's from the Irish Folklore Commission. Is that correct?
That's right. He's an archivist, yeah.
Yeah, and that podcast was fantastic. I took so much out of it, and I thought it was fascinating. But the concept of local heroes, I think, is something that's been lost a little bit. And the story you had just told about you lifting that stone kind of epitomizes that, because I just thought that was really, really, really a cool aspect of it. Of so much pride from just the area you're in and who had done what at what point in time is a really, really neat thing. And also in that podcast I took away, and just want to thank you again for your involvement in the Agaili stone that we the Edmonton Stones of Strength, because it was from that podcast that I had heard that story about Martin Rua and it's a good story.
What a story.
Yeah.
Martin Rua and Henry Moore, it was like something from the Wild West, what a fantastic story, that these guys, like, to settle an argument, they went down to see who could lift a block of wood. Now, I'm sure a block of wood was fairly fucking big. They went down to lift a block of wood on the shore, and said a man who could lift it to his knees, he was a good man, but a man who could lift it to his shoulder, he was called Far Agaili. And Agaili would be like a berserker, or like just a man of like irrational strength, So I just thought that was such a cool concept. You know what I mean? It was a really cool story.
Yeah, and that's what.
And I mean, what a lift from you guys! Jesus Christ, that lift was incredible on that stone. So congratulations, man! That was just amazing.
380 to shoulder, I figure, was reasonable for that title. So thank you for your.
I think so. That's insane strength. So much congratulations.
If only
thank you.
Disputes were so easily settled. Although now you would win every argument. So quite fair. So. Well, that's awesome. When you touched on the Flag of Den, that's another one that's absolutely fascinating, because it's not a natural stone. It's clearly been, modified and has some significant historical significance because of its purpose as sort of a stone of worship. Do you want to touch on the story in finding that stone, because it's such a unique one? I haven't seen one like it anywhere else in the world, and I think.
It was amazing, because I mean, I was reading up about Dukas, about the Flag of Den, and there's about 15 stories about it. So it was obviously a very, very famous stone in the area. But I went researching again this week about it, lads, just to kind of tangent a little bit. And the stories about the area and the graveyard and the stone, I mean, it is film material. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like there's stories of giants who threw the stone, like Fionn McCool was meant to have thrown the stone from Slieve Lake, which was 3 kilometres away. Fionn McCool being the leader of the Fianna. You have a ghost carriage with 4 headless horses that pulls the carriage at night time around the graveyard. You have stories about a mermaid who was on the lake beside the graveyard. You have stories about, in the famine, that people used to exhume the bodies and eat the bodies in the graveyard because of famine, because they were so hungry. You have all of these unbelievable stories about it, and it was used as a mass stone. So a mass stone was that back in the 16th and 17th century, through penal law, we weren't allowed to practice Catholicism or speak Irish in Ireland. So they used to be saying mass in graveyards secretly, so they wouldn't get caught. So it means like this story, the history behind it is incredible. It's absolutely amazing. And there was also a story that if you turned the stone and cursed your neighbours, like a pagan cursing stone. I mean, you're going back maybe 2,000 years with a pagan cursing stone, you know. So like these stories are amazing. I got to go see can I find that stone. So Cavan is about 3.5 hour drive from me. So I get in the car and drive up, and I get to the church. So like because the graveyard is non Google Maps, it's so old. So I get to the church. I'm rooting around the church. I can't find anything. I could find the new graveyard, not the old one. So I was looking around the fields, and I was like, shit, where is this place? And all of this old man comes out of the church, and I accosted him. I said, look, I'm sorry, I'm looking for the old graveyard in Off Grim. He's like, oh yeah, he said, it's about a mile down the road on the right. He said, there's two graveyards, but he said the old one is on the right hand side. And he said, but it's very overgrown. He said, I mean, it's wicked overgrown. He said, you know, you can't even see the headstones in there. I said, what are you doing? You want to cut the grass? I said, I'm not. I said, I'm looking for the flags. The flags at Den. I said, looking for the flags at Den. The flags at Den. He said, Jesus, he said, I haven't heard of them in about 50 years. He said, but I've never seen one. He said, I've heard of them, but I've never seen one, you know. So he said, you do well to find it, he says, because it's just so overgrown. You know, the best of luck to you, but I can't see you find that in there. And I knew what he meant. So I drive down then, and I get to the place, lads, and the weeds are like the height of the ceiling. They're 8 feet tall. Like, so it's like, and you can't see anything. All you can see is overgrowth, brambles, briars, tall weeds, grasses. You know, like this is going to be fucking hard. You know. So I in the back because I mean I wasn't expecting anything like this. I mean I have a bill hook, like a long bill hook in the back of the car and a crowbar. You know, but I mean if I knew I was coming to this, I'd be getting something mechanical. But I got up there anyway, and I start on the wrong side where I should have started. Now I know that now. I started on the right hand side, and I started just hacking through this graveyard, right? So I'm there with this bill hook slashing through. I'm not joking. 8 foot fucking tall weeds, brambles, poking about, and I'm finding headstones. I'm finding brown sandstone headstones, but they're all like headstones. Right? They got names and dates on them. I'm like okay, so line by line, I go through the entire graveyard. It's about an acre of a graveyard, up and down, and that like all sunken underfoot because of like subsuming with the the bodies in the graves.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's kind of like this, you know. So like it was just really, really hard work. Cutting, looking for hitting something, hitting a stone. No, that's not it. That's like the headstone. Just up and down this thing. So after 2.5 hours, I'm absolutely fucking wrecked, tired. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck am I doing here? This is just the act of a madman. I'm in a fucking graveyard. I'm hacking at shit with a bill hook. I'm covered in blood up to my fucking elbows because of brambles, mud, sweat, fucking stuff sticking to my face. I'm like, nah, it's time to get out of here. You know, you're just a fucking lunatic. So I said, look, I'll try one more piece. There's only one more piece left. It's up in the top corner of the graveyard. So there's no big load of ivy there. So I'm just half-heartedly slashing at all this stuff again. And I get a clang. And then I pull back the bottom of the ivy and I see the bottom of a carved cross. So I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, this could be it. So I pull back all the ivy off it. And it's just this big, beautiful, perfect flagstone with a perfectly carved or etched cross into the top of it. And I'm like, that's it. That's the flag. And then on beside it, I find a broken one. And some of the stories are on about like that some of the Protestants were brought up and they broke the flags of then because of whatever arguments they were having back in the day. But there was one broken and there was one intact. And the size of it, lads. I mean, just to find it
Mm-hmm.
and know that these stories were real. You know, all of these stories, obviously, it means the stories about mermaids or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, all of the stories about men lifting it, like a man called like Larry Hyland of Banahoe, he lifted it. A man was meant to have picked it up and put it on his back and walked to the pub and got a whiskey and brought it back. There's another man that meant to have walked it around the graveyard. And I looked at the stone and was like, my God, that thing is huge, you know, because it's about maybe 3.5 to 4 feet long and about maybe 3 feet wide. And it's about like 8 to 10 inches thick. It's huge. You know, I mean, it's really, really big. So it's like, how in the name of God did somebody pick this up? Because I could flip it up and I could flip it over,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and flip it around, but I couldn't. Like I couldn't even dream of lifting it up. Maybe now a year later, with a lot of strength training behind me, I could maybe try and leverage lift that thing up. But
Yeah.
the story behind it, the stone itself, the finding of it felt like something from fucking Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And it was just the most amazing thing. You know, it really was. And it's there now for people to see it. And it's like that stone, there's so many stories attached to that stone. I think it probably should be in a museum.
Mm-hmm.
It's got so much history attached to it, you know, from pagan times about the cursing stones through to it being an altar stone because we were in the oppression from the British. And then you have all of the history and mythology around it. It's just amazing, you know?
That's kind of the crossover, though, between the mythical and the reality side of things. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. I mean, sure, it's Ireland, you know, that's what we are, you know?
Right.
We're kind of a bridge, I think, between mythology and reality over here. And the more I'm researching to these stones and the more people I'm meeting and the stories they're telling me, the more I believe it, you know? I mean, there's still a bit of magic left in this world, you know, and we're unrooting it bit by bit. Like, it's just fantastic.
Just the existence of that stone, the fact that even you're saying one is broken and one isn't, which is similar to what the stories had said, means that maybe there's a truth to some of the stories, right? Maybe not sticking it on your back and walking to the pub, but someone very likely lifted it and it was witnessed by somebody else. Like the existence of proves truth to some of the stories. So
they do. I mean, like, and that's all we have to go off. I mean, obviously there's nothing noted and we can't ever record. It was too far back to be no such thing as recording equipment. But I mean, somebody remembered that story enough that they told it to their kids, who then told it to this child. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So there's obviously somebody done something with it, you know, and they have the names of the people who done it, you know. Of course, like, this is Ireland. We never let the truth get in the way of a good story, you know.
Yeah.
We fucking love telling stories. That's who we are. But what I find, there's always a kernel of truth in all these, you know. There's always a kernel of truth.
How far do you think the nearest pub is from the graveyard?
It's well closed now. I mean, I'd say I was told it was 100 perches, which I think is about a meter, 2 meters. So probably about 100 meters. You know, maybe around 100 meters from the pub,
always looking
you know,
for the next challenge. So I figure maybe we'll go for a trip to Ireland.
Right, the open challenge is there, lads. Anyone wants to come and give it a go, I put a bottle of whiskey 100 yards away. We give it a lad.
There you go. Yeah.
Is that one that Sean Urquhart will be going to? Do you know?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Who's got a chance?
Sean's coming over. I'm really excited about this because, like, I mean, this is probably the first Irish Stone tour ever, you know, ever. So, and like, what a guy to start off with. Sean is just incredible. He's a great athlete. He's a very fucking strong guy, and he's a lot of respect for all these stones, you know. So we're starting next Thursday.
Oh man, that's
awesome. And we're going to do pretty much fucking everything, you know.
Yeah.
We're going to go for all of them. I mean, and the thing is, I don't think there's a stone tour like it in the world, because all of the stones are just so fucking big. I know I've said it already, but they're massive stones.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everyone I've gone to, you're probably talking average 170, you know.
Oh, man.
Because, I mean, I'm breaking ground relatively comfortably with 180 now, you know, 185. And a lot of these stones, I can't budge them, or I can just about get the wind under them. I mean, they have to be up around 170, you know. I haven't weighed them all, but they're just massive. Well, what seems to be the tradition here is it's like a feat of strength by the strongest man in the village.
Yeah.
So the strongest man at the time, to show his strength, picked up that stone. So, like, the great challenge is, are you as strong as the strongest man in maybe not only the parish but the surrounding areas?
That's right. Yeah.
Of 150 to 200 years ago, you know. It's a wonderful challenge, and it's very humbling as well, because these guys were doing this without fucking periodized strength training.
That's
you know, they were doing this
nutrition
without
different,
fucking
everything. Yeah.
You know, they were just, this is just born from their day-to-day work.
Yeah.
You know, so they were strong enough in their work to do that.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. We have a bit of a recency bias with strength, where we think we are the strongest people that have ever lived. But like, if you look at some of these, I believe a lot of what are these older stories. Maybe some people don't, and there's specific ones that you wouldn't. But these guys, they were basically the masters of submaximal training, because they would just be working all day. And you know what? If you ask me who I would want in my side, is it the guy that works out in the gym 10 hours a week, or the guy that works with his hand in the field 10 hours a day? I'm picking the guy that works in the field 10 hours a day.
But as you know, if you play sports, when I played a little bit of sports in school and stuff, and you always know what the farmer's son is, you know, if you're playing whatever contact sport, you know, this young lad has been working since he's been able to walk. He's been picking stuff up. He's been helping out in the farm. He's been moving, lifting, shifting, pulling and dragging his whole life. And he's just as strong as a fucking ox, you know. And these are the guys I always find who are the strongest, you know, these farmers, fishermen, you know, stonemasons. And these are the guys I'm meeting on the way. I met a stonemason up on my last trip to Canada before this one. A guy called Martin Tim. And Martin Tim was the strongest man. He's 81 years old now, and he was the strongest man in the area pretty much back in the day. And I met this guy, and he shook my hand, and I thought he was going to break my fucking wrists. You know what I mean? The guy just huge hands, solid, 81 years old, and still be as strong as he is. He's still working in the stonemason. He's still working in the stone quarry, you know. an absolute tank. And like these guys, like that was their job.
Yeah.
You know, meeting the lads on the Aran Islands. I met the lads in Inishmaan, the stonemasons over there. And like I said, they just work pulling and dragging stone like all day, every day. You know what I mean? No break. So you're just lifting stone all day. You know what I mean?
On it, right? It's not like us where we have the privilege to be able to work out in our spare time because we work other careers. That was their
Exactly.
Their ability to provide for their family depended upon their physical strength. So
that was it. You know, it's definitely more of a cut and dry time. I mean, I think Levantadores is a beautiful expression of that as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's there. So this is something I wanted to talk to you about because something that always comes up with especially what you're doing there is the concept of stones always being around graveyards or on coffin roads, tied in with funeral games, and thought maybe we could chat a little bit about that because that's something that's also mirrored a bit in the Gaelic stone lifting in Scotland. And so
that's true.
Just if you wouldn't mind touching on that because it seems to be a common thread amongst Celtic and Gaelic stone lifting.
Yeah, it's something that seemed to have just died out back in the mid 1800s. But before that, and this is just from talking to the likes of Johnny Dillon and to Dr. Conor Heffernan and stuff, we were talking about this. We're like, funeral games was a thing. So like a funeral seemed to have lasted maybe 3 or 4 days. So you had like the wake, and then you had the day before the funeral, then the burying, and then the day after. So there were 3 or 4 day events, and especially with somebody who was very popular. The whole parish would get together, you know, maybe who wouldn't ever get together, only on occasions like this, you know. So at these, the younger men to pass the time, you know, maybe they might have known the man too well, but the younger men to pass the time in Scotland, like seeing they tossing the caber and putting the stone, and over here it was the same idea. It was lifting heavy stones, and there was like collar and elbow wrestling, there was horse racing, there was running racing. It seemed to be more like an event, a celebration almost, you know, of virility, maybe of life. Maybe it's because it's the total opposite of death, you know. But these funeral games were very, very popular back in the day, and whoever performed well at them got huge social status from it, you know. So you were the guy who lifted the best or lifted the highest on the day, you know. You got very well regarded back in these kind of more simpler times. So these funeral games, so like all these stones, like I said, probably 75% of the stones I'm finding are in these old graveyards because they were part of these funeral games, these fates that they had at these important people's funerals, and just finding these stones and just seeing like those the one down in Faha down in County Clare where I found the woman's lifting stone as well as the man's lifting stone was a real revelation. I mean, Conor really was fascinated by this, that it was a specific female lifting stone. Like, you had the man's lifting stone, you had the Cloch na Fer, and you had the female's lifting stone, the Cloch na Man, and there was a dedicated strength process for the women as well. You know, so who was the strongest woman of the day, who was the strongest man of the day. So like that was just fascinating to me as well. That there was, and that's not the only one was lifting stone. I found another 3 since, but it's amazing because it's generally such a masculine thing that was just great to have it, the female strength kind of lauded as well, you know, and they got obviously social status and respect for that too.
Wow. I was doing a little research on some of Peter Martin's work, and I'm just going to read something here because I think this ties into it, and it's on the on the note of coffin roads, because there's a lot of stones that come up on coffin roads. So just a couple. This is from Twixt the Stone and Turf by Peter Martin. He says, "Getting to the cemetery is where strength culture applies itself. The road or track to the cemetery from a township could span many miles over rough terrain, and these tracks, known as coffin roads, were used every Sunday to get to worship. The length of these tracks could span many miles, and every now and again, when used for funeral purposes, the deceased coffin would be placed on either a flat plinth or a rock flattened by the cairn. These are known as coffin stops." So this is the first aspect of it, but this is what I thought was really neat here. It says, there's a substantial number of lifting stones that exist on these ancient tracks, and it cannot be underemphasized. These tracks, amounting to many hundreds in the highlands and islands, many of which have yet to be properly explored, are indeed the future of any future research on Gaelic strength. Put quite simply, if there is such a track that exists, along its length there will be a place where lifting stone exists. And that it goes even deeper here, which is, it says that another element of funeral culture of note is the note of carrying a coffin. Again, Gaelic belief systems emphasize that no man should be at the ass of an animal, and hence a true Highland funeral does not involve a horse or hearse. So what this basically says is that the whole aspect of the funeral procession is a display of strength because you would have to carry it, the coffin, because you would not want your dead friend or relative behind the ass of an animal. So not only were you carrying the coffin, but along those whole routes, there were stones for you to lift. So this is in Scotland, but this is a Gaelic tradition. And so I would have to imagine it's very similar to what you might have had over in Ireland.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I found out a lot of coffin roads over here. And I suppose that makes sense because in Scotland, like you have the Highlands, again, they're very, very bare and rocky, that you'd have a coffin road because there might be only one patch of grass or one place that you can bury a body within maybe 5 or 10 miles. It's the same way on the Aran Islands. They did all these coffin roads, and up the west, Connemara, the Burren, where it's just like the ground is just rock, that you'd have to travel a long distance with the body to get it to an area that you could actually bury it because the ground is too shallow. You can't, or you're just hitting bedrock within, a foot or 2 feet. So yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Thanks for sharing that, lads.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. Just every aspect of their life was a test and an opportunity to display your strength. So you could see how your social status would be directly tied into everything you did if you were strong.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the one on the Aran Islands, like I said, the first one I found, the graveyard stone, which is about 160, 165 kilos. The true test of the island was to lift that stone onto the wall, the graveyard wall, and I was talking to someone, like as I was lifting the stone, there was men just walking over across the fields. I could see him doing now. The word got out that this guy's lifting the stones. There's men just coming from everywhere. You see them just walking across fields and appearing over walls, and they were just coming. And you're lifting the stone, but I said I'll try my best. And they were like, then they were telling all their stories about. One guy said that my granddad was the last man to lift this stone. This old man came out with a cane. I mean, this guy, it took him about fucking 20 minutes to walk about 200 yards, but he made the fucking effort. You know what I mean? He came out of his fucking chair. He probably sitting there. He probably can barely move. But he got up on his fucking walking cane and walked out to meet me because he was so interested in what I was doing. You know what I mean? I thought that was beautiful. And he was like, my granddad, he said, was the last man to lift this stone, he said. And he said he got so much social status that he didn't have to buy a drink on the island for 6 weeks, he said. Every time he went to the bar, everyone was talking about him. You lifted the stone onto the wall. And so, like, it might be a simple thing, and some people might laugh at it in the simplicity, but I think it's beautiful,
It is.
that you got this social credit for being able to do something difficult, So I think it's beautiful to have these kind of tests here now, because it's just that doesn't happen in nowadays in day-to-day life. So it's wonderful you're carrying it forward.
To see, like, what an amazing thing for that man to make the effort to come and see you, knowing that stone is part of his family history, and to see that stone being refreshed through your efforts, like that must have been incredibly rewarding for him.
He was delighted. I mean, he would have been more delighted if I could get it onto the wall because I couldn't. I could just get it up to my knees. But I'm going back, because, like I said, I'm coming from just endurance background. I'm coming from being a 78 kg just machine to run and to lift, endurance-wise, to lifting one big heavy object. It's been quite the journey strength-wise over the past 2 years for me as well, because it's not something I ever done before. So I've had to put back on a lot of weight that I'd lost, which felt kind of weird. But you put it on like this.
Your dumbbells haven't gone to waste though, because now you stack them on top of the stones you're lifting to add weight.
Oh, it's been such a tough journey, but it's been so rewarding. And please God, it will be more rewarding when I get over to that stone next week, because I've been thinking about this stone for 16 months. I've been thinking about it. I can't wait to get over it again. I get my hands on it. So hopefully this will be a redemption time. I'm going to put everything I have into it anyway. So
you're such a great example of this sort of flexibility or like elasticity of human physiology, that if you put yourself under a particular stress, your body will adapt in kind, so you can manage that stress, going from nothing to running marathons to kettlebells to stone lifting, all within less than a decade. Like it's
a decade. That's it. And I say to people as well, just put your mind to it, and give it your fucking full ass. Don't half-ass everything.
Yeah.
Get in there.
Yeah.
Get into it, and stop asking questions. Just stop fucking pissing and moaning and just get out and lift the fucking thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
And if you can't do it, go back and fucking try it again tomorrow. But just get out and get active and get doing it, because don't be thinking about it and stop talking about it. Just get out and fucking do it. And you'll be amazed how much you figure out yourself. Of course, you need to get a coach. They can help you at the start. But I found with me, it was like, once you get out and you started doing it, you start figuring out shit yourself, You see what your weaknesses are, make them stronger. it's been a really cool 2 years. It has. It's going from like my cardio has gone down a bit, obviously, because my cardio was really fucking high. But I mean, my strength and mobility has gone way up. So it's been a really interesting like kind of journey on your body and how it can react to stimulus.
Yeah. What you're saying about changing, like that's the beauty of stone lifting. That stone's not changed. Have you? Have you changed enough to be able to lift that stone week over week? That test remains the same.
Exactly. That's the stone is still there. It's waiting for you. And I love that it's cut and dry. You're strong enough, you're not. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no trophies for fucking competing in this thing. It's you're either strong enough or you're not. The stone doesn't care if you're a man, if you're a woman, whatever you are. You know what I mean? It doesn't care what your religion is. It doesn't care about your creed, your color. It just cares that can you lift it or not. And that's what I love about it. It's so simple, but it's beautiful like that.
It's something that's so neat because I come from a bit of a varied background in strength, from powerlifting into strongman, then into stone lifting. I did some steel bending in there, but it's there's something unique about the stones, just like even removing it from the historical and cultural side of it, just as an aspect of training. You'd said just go out and kind of tinker with it, and that's something you can. Like there can be a stone. My friend Troy, who's Beard and Boulder, I'm not sure if you follow him on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, we got another stone up for the Edmonton Stones of Strength. It's not named yet, but it's 393 pounds of smooth granite, that white and gray one.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I didn't even know if it was liftable. And then him and I went down and we tinkered with it for probably an hour. And every handle, every angle, like it's just such a neat thing. With the barbell, it's like, okay, if I'm going to do a deadlift, I can play with my foot positioning, my width, and all that kind of stuff. You do go in sumo, you go conventional, you want to do a snatch grip, sure. But with the stone, you can spend forever just finding the exact right handles for you. And it's just such a neat thing. And then all of that time you put into that object, you build a connection with it. And each stone, like at one of our sites, we have, I think, close to, 16 to 20 stones. But every stone to us now kind of has a story because we've all lifted it one way or a person the other way. And it's just, you build a little bit of a connection with an object that you don't quite see with a barbell or I'm sure a little bit with a kettlebell, but not quite as much as a stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's like I said, it's a really, really good way of putting it, lads. Yeah, that was cool. And yeah, I always thought it was like the thinking man's lift, because you have to figure it out. That there's a way it wants to be lifted.
Yeah.
And you've got to figure that out yourself. It's, like I said, there's so many different angles, so many different, centers of gravity on it. You have to figure out where you can get the best grip on it, what way you can stand it. Yeah, it's so much fun. And like once you get that lift, it's a hard to explain the feeling of it, especially something you haven't lifted before. It's practically spiritual, I find it anyway. I found a stone down at the beach there last week. This huge big monster of a 170 kilo tombstone almost, and I got a lift on that. And like I said, you almost get a connection with it. You can't wait to go back out and try it again. So I go back out tomorrow to get a lift on this thing again. And yeah, it's awesome. It's what a great way of training. Like I'm only pity I didn't do it 10 years ago because I'm 44 now in 2 days' time. So we keep going as long as we can.
It's astounding to me too because it is such an incredible physical pursuit and creates such amazing functional strength. And you were able to ascend to the absolute pinnacle of kettlebell sports, which is also so functional strength based, without any awareness of this whole world of stone lifting. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's not more well known because it is such an incredible way to build just full body strength.
It's incredible. It's an incredible way of training, and it's like I said, it's probably the most functional thing you do as a human. You pick something up off the ground, whether it's your kids or your shopping or suitcases or whatever. It's just that functional movement, and to get strong in that, you're free. You're walking around. You're strong. You're strong. If you're going to pick something up or somebody needs a hand with something, you can do it. You know what I mean? Moving a house, they can all fuck off and sick of them. But I work in a builder's provider, so you're picking up bags of coal, you're picking up bags of cement, you're picking up loads of timber. You're not worried because I'm picking up something fucking 4 times heavier than that for shits and giggles. You know what I mean? So picking up that kind of stuff off the ground, there's no problem. It's great, like I said, functional strength.
There's a to sort of circle back, there's one stone I'd be remiss not to discuss, because we were talking about the Flag of Den and sort of the historical and the mythical aspect of it. I'd said I think in the first podcast that I view stone lifting and historical stones as the confluence between mythology, history, and strength sports. And the stone for me that sits right in the center of those three things is the Cloudhundra. That stone captivated me. Just the story behind it. The setting is absolutely picturesque. If you were to tell me that was CGI, I would believe you, because it's remarkable. What looked to be handprints in the stone. Like, that stone is just amazing.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. If you look up Dukas, and anybody in the whole world, I love it, get into Dukas and just type in stone, right? But if you type in giant or giants into Dukas, you might get 1,000 references to giants throwing stones all around Ireland, because every glacial or attic or large boulder sitting by itself in a field or on a hill has been, through Irish mythology, thrown by a giant. Mm-hmm. So there's hundreds of these in Ireland. They're everywhere. Every county in Ireland and every village has a giant throwing stone in it, which I just think is awesome anyway. Yeah. You see, that's fantastic. They're great stories, and like most of them are thrown by Fionn McCool. If Fionn McCool threw all of them, all he's done his whole life was wander around Ireland just fucking stones up mountains. they're all there, So I visited about 20 to maybe 30 of these sites, and the reason they're called giant throwing stones is they're absolutely huge. Huge as in like the size of the room I'm sitting in now. You're talking something could be 60 tons, or it could be like 100 tons, or the size of like an Arctic fucking truck. And some of them then, like the smaller ones, even the smaller ones, you're looking at them going like, that's probably like 800 kilos, But what I love about all of them is, like, they say the giant's hand marks are in the stone, and there's all these kind of paw marks and thumb prints and stuff in all of these stones. You're like, what a cool story, So I was like, imagine if there was a giant's throwing stone that was also a lifting stone. But I said, the chances are very, very slim, But I just kept researching, like, I spent probably 8 months every day researching at Dukas. And all of a sudden I hear about someone called the Clochundara up in County Mayo. And the story goes that the giant in the area picked up this stone, he threw it around like a pebble because he was so strong. He used to throw it over his shoulder. And said that giant's throwing stone is still there. And they said the men in the area used to test themselves to see were they as strong as an Irish giant. So it's like, that's possibly the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
There's a
me too, yeah.
There's a stone that a giant used to chuck around a couple of thousand years ago. The marks of his hands where he squeezed it like it was like mall on a soft clay is there in it. And the stone is still there, and the Irishmen used to test themselves to see were they as strong as the giant. So like, I fucking have to go up to see this thing. So a friend of mine, Celine, lives up in County Mayo. So I'm not going to drive up 5.5 hours just to see if it's there. I'll ask someone first, just to see, So Celine went down. She only lives 15 minutes away. She went down and said, "Yeah, the stone is there." She was in the middle of the village green, but it's sitting on 4 stone legs. I think it might be cemented into. I was like, shit. Imagine if it was cemented in. I said, that'd be awful. Because I've gone to some stones, some of these beautiful Balloon stones, and they've been cemented into church walls or onto windowsills, and you can't lift them. There were lifting stones, and they still are, but you can't get them because they're cemented. So I rang up the town council, and they said, no, it's just sitting on the legs. We're kind of using it as a seat. So it's like, right, I'm going. So I rang them on the Wednesday, and that Saturday I got up at like 4:00 in the morning. It was my first day off since they phoned me, and I drove the whole way up to Mayo, and I drove into it's a Auchagaur village, and it's like something from driving into the Middle Ages in Ireland. You have like this perfectly intact round tower, the spire round tower, old room cathedrals. You have like a St. Patrick's well where St. Patrick was meant to have lived and said mass. You have this stone bridges and rivers, old thatched pubs. I'm like, this is like the most fucking beautiful place I think I've ever seen. And there, as you drive in on the village green, is this big fucking stone sitting on these 4 stone legs. And you can go and lift it. It's there. And you walk up to it and you can see the hand marks on the stone. It's by a wall. Behind the wall, there's all these like old Celtic crosses. As I was there, the sun was coming up, this pink sky. I'm like, this doesn't look real. It's like I've stepped into an alternate fucking reality.
Yeah.
And they think quintessential Irish fucking thing. Here I am, but the stone is there, it's available to lift. And again, that was one of my first finds, so I wasn't strong enough, or I haven't trained that kind of lift before, because it's a hug lift. It's like it's a big, almost like a big loaf of bread shape.
Yeah.
You'd have to be about maybe like 6'6" to be able to kind of straddle it and pick it like a normal pick. It's just so broad. But for us normal guys, you flip it up and hug it, bear hug it and squeeze it like the Bjornov stack, that kind of a lift. So I can't wait to get back up and try that one again as well. I got a lot of unfinished business with these stones, and I've had to put a lot of hard work into it. But the Clochandara, because it's the bridge between fucking mythology and reality, it's there. That's the fucking physical bridge between Irish mythology, giants, and the giant's name I think was Donald Dúrcal Gwilda. And the giant used to throw that stone, and that's a great story, but there it fucking is.
Yeah.
And you can go lift it, It's just absolutely magic.
It is.
It's magic, and I can't wait to get back up to it again, to be honest with you.
To be honest, I traveled around a little bit of England prior to our Scottish stone lifting tour last year, and having seen the Avebury Standing Stone Circle, that is multiple hundreds of megalithic standing stones over like a kilometer plus expanse. The thought of giants having been real at some point really did creep in, because I don't know how people had done that without the use of modern technology, moving these gigantic stones. And for some of them, they're 20 feet tall, and half of them is buried underground. Like, it's just amazing.
That's amazing. I mean, like you got all the dolmens here as well. I mean, I was at a dolmen there just 3 days ago. There's one called the Gallstown Dolmen. And like the capstone is like 40 tons weight, and it's sitting on knife edge stones, like, so sitting on the top of these knife edge stones. Yeah. And there's 3 stones, 1, 2, and 1 at the back. And this stone is just precariously balanced on top. But I mean, it's like 40 fucking ton.
Yeah.
And it's still standing. And like, they're saying this stone is like 4,000 to 5,000 years old. You know what I mean? And it's still fucking there, and it's still perfectly intact. And they're all over. I mean, there's 12 within a half-hour drive of me, and there's hundreds of them around Ireland. Like you said, how in the name of God would you go about even making that,
We can't even make roads in Canada that last more than one winter, so...
that is true, yeah.
Oh, lads, yeah, it's just awesome. I mean, you got to get your asses over here, lads. You got to come over.
Yeah.
Get the fuck over here at some stage. I'll meet you up.
Yeah.
We go for a few drinks. We lift a few big rocks. Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. Yeah, we think we might do Iceland next year, but then I would imagine that would be the next trip for sure, because it would be awesome.
Awesome. Oh yeah, lads. Look, it's like I said, it's been some adventure. It's just been amazing, and there's still more to find. I'm still in the middle of it. I mean, to go from nothing, to 1 to 9 and now to 2 dozen. It's incredible, and I have more leads. There's more to come. I'm sure there'll be more fantastic stones and stories. There's been amazing ones already. I could talk about them all day. Like I said, every single one of them has its own history and mythology attached to it. And I've leads for at least another 3 more up around Galway. And Galway seems to be a really hotbed for it. Galway has 9, 10 stones of its own, in that one county. So it seems to be the place where it's still very, very popular and very, very well respected. Because I find once you go I haven't found anything like from middle of Ireland east. I haven't found anything yet. I suppose maybe because we kept more of our Gaelic roots over this way, and we're probably further away from England over this way.
Yeah.
So it's harder to get to us, and that the ground was worse. But I mean, I think we're more kind of Norman and Viking as well down my end. I'm down the southeast, in Waterford, which is like the old Viking for up with Badfjord, so it was an old Viking fjord. So we were kind of more Viking Norman this way, but we retained the Gaelicness from the middle across, and it seems to be that's with the stones as well.
Oh no, I'm just blown away by all this.
You've created so much momentum with what you've been doing that now it sounds like people are reaching out to you to tell you about the stones. They're excited to share. You're not having to do as much digging. Like they know to come to you to put these stones on the map.
It's self-generating now, like, which is great, because I mean, you get to the stage like where you do exhaust the references online. Like I think I pretty much have exhausted most of the ones on Dukas that are available. I've got maybe 3 or 4 maybe leads, which are getting to the real kind of maybes now, and very, very loose, generic places where they are. But what's happening now is there's a great guy called Sean Costalva, who's an Irish kind of Shanachie, which would be a storyteller, like a folklorist and a poet, and he lives up in Galway, and he is fully invested in this. He just thinks this is fantastic. He's all about Irish, keeping Irish traditions alive. So he knows pretty much fucking everybody in Galway. I mean, I went up with him there last weekend, and he's just pulling up to people's houses, knocking on the door, walking in, and everybody knows him. It's strange. I mean, if you done it in Waterford, you could get a fucking belt of a hurley, like. But he just walks into people's houses, and it's like, oh, how are you, Sean? And oh, yeah, this lad is up from Waterford. He's looking for the stone. Oh, Jesus, I heard about that, yeah. Or go up to this lad, he'll tell you about it. But Sean has contacted me now about, I think there's 5 stones the last 5 stones have been almost all through him, And it's not just Sean. Conor Heffernan now is all over it as well. He's looking really, really hard. Johnny Dillon in the National Folklore Collection, because maybe I didn't say this before, like there's a full other manuscript collection, which is probably about 10 times larger than the one from the kids took. Like it's called, when that was like professional folklorists went around Ireland and asked everybody all these stories. But there's this huge manuscript collection that hasn't been put online. It's just up in Dublin. So I mean, that's another thing I can start poking at that, because there's so much in that. Like there's 10 times more than there is in the school's collection one. So I mean, there could be hundreds in that as well, But like I've guys helping, there's guys counting in now, and like, I'm thinking there could be fucking hundreds over here. I'm at this stage. I'm thinking like I'm at 24. I've put in like a year and a half of work. I mean, what's the next 2 or 3 years going to be like? And because, which is incredible, I'm getting all this publicity now. You know what I mean? That I never ever thought would happen. It's gone from me being just a guy in the car with a fucking slash hook, hacking through ditches, finding these stones, to all of a sudden you're being invited on all of these fucking top podcasts. The national news and fucking TV stations are getting involved. And fucking GQ, I got a phone call from them last week.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, again, it's this alternate reality that you just walk through a fucking portal and people are really interested in what you're doing. But I think it's grabbed people because it's so root and branch, and it's so old school and primitive. And the fact that the whole cultural vibe about it as well, especially with Ireland and repression, I think it's striking a lot of chords. Like folklorists are into it, historians love it, archaeologists love it, strongmen love it, powerlifters love it. It ticks a lot of boxes, and all of a sudden it's becoming a thing, and it's just amazing. It's hard to put into words what's happened in the last 6 weeks. It's been fucking surreal.
Passion is contagious, regardless of what it's about, and I mean, you absolutely exude passion, and so thank you for what you do. And you had said you sort of felt like you walked into alternate reality, but you've kind of created that through your own hard work and your blood and your sweat equity. So, I mean, as people sort of on the outside looking in, it's been an incredible story to watch unfold. And so thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, lads, it's amazing. It's amazing. And thank you so much for the kind words. Because, like it started off, I was just the mad guy in the car, and everyone at work, well, they all know I'm mad at this stage. Shit. But now it's taken on a whole cultural identity, and the resurgence of Irish stone lifting is going to be big. It's going to be awesome. And if I want to do it, we'll fuck with it.
Oh, you certainly have.
It's already getting huge. Like you said, all the people reached out to you. So congratulations on all your hard work. And I mean, you're getting the attention you deserve from it. I know you don't do it for attention. You do it for the love of it, but you're getting proper kudos because of what you're doing. So people clearly are latching onto it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's always nice to get a bit of thank you, especially for something that you're doing. It's not something that really, I needed to hear, but it's always wonderful to get a little bit of, to get your flowers and someone to say, look, thanks for putting in the effort, So, but I said, it's not just for me, it's for the whole culture, it's for Ireland, it's for our heritage, our history, and our folklore, and to keep it alive, because, like I said, in this current day and age, we're losing a lot. So it's just to keep that stuff alive is very, very special.
That was the first communication you and I had. I had sort of sat and watched your story unfold. I have to reach out. As sappy as it might sound, I had to just reach out to you and say, like, what you're doing is amazing. Thank you for doing it. You're preserving history. You're sharing with the rest of the world, and it's pretty important. And I think as members of a fairly small niche community, I think it's important that we do that for each other, because the rising tide lifts all ships, and we're sort of our own, the stone lifting community. We are each other's support network, and the more that we push to uncover new stones, push each other for physical challenges, bring awareness to stone lifting culture and the importance of preserving historical stones, I think, that agenda just gets pushed far more when there's a collective of people behind it than individuals. So.
Exactly. Like we're, we're stronger together,
Yeah, absolutely. So I think before we wrap this up, let us know what's going on in the next couple of weeks. You got a big month ahead of you.
Yeah, I mean, It's awesome. So like we got Sean coming over next Wednesday, and I'm meeting him for 4 days. We're going to do the Aran Island stones. We're going to do the Inishmore stone. We're going over to Inishboffin. We're going to do that beautiful circular Ballon stone to lift onto the altar over there in the ruined monastery of Inishboffin. We're going to do all the West Galway stones, and then we're coming down here for 3 days to do the Thomas Lonergan stone and all the ones around the southeast. We're going to come out and lift the stones on the beach that I lift. I'm going to show them around some awesome dolmens and some history and stuff. It's going to be a great couple of days. Like I said, GQ have done that piece, which is going to be put into their next magazine. Like, I mean, that's worldwide. That's unbelievable. I still can't believe it. And until I see the fucking physical thing, I won't believe it's happening. You know, I'm not even telling anybody really yet, but I've just told everybody now. But I mean, I still don't quite believe it until I see it. So I mean, like, that's got worldwide reach. So like, what the hell is going to happen next? I'm not sure. But a really big one as well is I'm organising a stone tour on the 8th of July. So Jamie Garrion is coming over, and we're going to do again the West Galway stones. We're going to go up and try and do the Flag at Den. And this guy's coming from all over Ireland. Some of our Iron Strong men are coming to that on July the 8th. And then in August, I have the end of August, the last weekend in August, 26th, 27th, we have the O'Flaherty Festival on Inishmore. So myself and Dr. Conor Heffernan have been asked over to do read the story of the stone down by the actual stone itself by the O'Flaherty Festival. So that'd be Liam O'Flaherty and his relations.
Cool.
So we're going over, like, talk about a full circle moment. We're going over to read that story of the stone, and we're going to try and get a couple of lifts on it as well. We have Ireland's eminent strength historian, a guy called Dr. Paul Rouse. He's coming over doing a talk on it. Dr. Conor Heffernan is going to be doing a talk on it. I'll be doing a talk on it. We'll be doing some lifting, and it's just going to be a really, really awesome day. You know, it's the first stone is very, very important to me, and to get this invite from the O'Flaherty family, because I mean, some of Liam O'Flaherty's relations are, you know, great grandkids will probably be there. You know, so how awesome is that? You know, that's just incredible. So that's on the end of August. So yeah, a really, really interesting couple of months coming up. That's really, really interesting.
Well, looking forward to hearing about all that. We hope that we can have you on another time and hear about all the new stones and all the experiences you've had.
Oh, I'd love to, lads. I really enjoyed the chat. I mean, like, I talk all night. I mean, it's not often you get to meet people who are into the same kind of stuff. You know, like I said, we're a small niche community, so I'd sit here and chat here with a couple of beers with you all night long. So thank you so much for having me on. It's been a real honour, lads. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for having me get my stories out there.
David Keohan, Indiana Stones, thank you so much. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be so kind as to leave the show a review, and then follow us over on Instagram at stonesofstrength_podcast.